In a world where the chasm between the elite and the working class has widened into an insurmountable abyss, the Discards unveils a chilling narrative of societal manipulation and neglect. The elites, perched atop their gilded towers, have crafted a dystopian reality where the working class is systematically stripped of their rights, resources, and hope. Instead of overt violence or genocide, they employ a more insidious strategy: the slow erosion of the human spirit and the gradual extinction of the very fabric of the working class. As access to basic necessities becomes a luxury, and oppressive taxes suffocate the ability to homestead, the working class finds itself trapped in a cycle of despair. Fertility declines, not through coercion, but through despair and disillusionment, as the dream of a future becomes an unattainable mirage. Families are torn apart by the weight of economic burden, and the once thriving communities crumble into silence. In this haunting exploration of societal decay, the Discards challenges us to confront the consequences of a world where the privileged few dictate the fate of the many, leaving behind a desolate landscape devoid of hope, vitality, and the promise of new life. Extinction. In the hushed halls of power, a sinister plan took root, veiled beneath the guise of progress and reform. The elite, with their polished suits and hidden agendas, gathered in clandestine meetings, whispering of a future where the working class was not eradicated through force, but rather allowed to wither away in a carefully orchestrated dance of despair. The first seeds of this plan were sown in the legislative chambers, where laws designed to suffocate the spirit of the populace began to emerge. It started innocuously enough. Politicians, cloaked in the rhetoric of improvement, proposed new tax measures on homesteads, claiming it was a necessary step to fund public services. The working class, already burdened by the weight of economic hardship, watched helplessly as their meager savings diminished. The homesteads that once symbolized independence and resilience became shackled under the weight of exorbitant taxes. Families who had cultivated their lands for generations now faced the grim reality of losing the very roots that anchored them to their heritage. As the tax laws tightened their grip, the elites turned their gaze to healthcare. Public health initiatives were restructured ostensibly to improve services, but in reality, to create further barriers for those who could not afford the escalating costs. Clinics that once served as sanctuaries for the ailing were now laden with fees that spiraled beyond reach. The message was clear: the working class was not worth the investment. The elites thrived on the notion that only the strong should survive, and by creating a system that prioritized profit over health, they effectively crafted a landscape of neglect. Media outlets, once regarded as the champions of truth, became instruments of manipulation. News cycles churned out a relentless barrage of negativity, fostering an environment of anxiety and hopelessness. Stories of crime, disaster, and despair dominated the airwaves, shaping public perception and breeding a culture of fear. The working class, bombarded by this ceaseless onslaught, found it increasingly difficult to envision a hopeful future. Mental health deteriorated, and families succumbed to the weight of stress, with many choosing to forego the dream of children altogether. In the shadows of this societal unraveling, whispers of dissent began to rise. Grassroots movements emerged, fueled by the desperate hope for change. But the elite, with their vast resources and control over the narrative, quickly silenced these voices. They painted dissenters as radicals, sowing division among the very people who sought unity. The seeds of mistrust were sown, and the working class, embattled and weary, began to turn on one another, further fracturing the community. As the laws continued to tighten around them, the working class faced an insurmountable challenge: to adapt to a world that seemed determined to erase them. Families that had once thrived on the land now found themselves in a struggle for mere survival. The dream of homesteading became a distant memory, overshadowed by the harsh reality of a system designed to keep them down. And so, in the quiet corners of this new dystopia, the elites watched with cold satisfaction. They had not needed genocide to achieve their goals. The slow, agonizing decline of the working class would serve their purpose just as effectively. With each legislative victory, they moved closer to a future where they could reign unchallenged, standing atop the ashes of a forgotten populace, ready to usher in a new era built on the ruins of a once vibrant society. Chapter 2. The divide deepens. As the sun rose over the sprawling city, its rays pierced through the smog, illuminating a world increasingly divided. The corporate landscape was a hive of activity, where pencil pushers, clad in their crisp suits, toiled away in high-rise towers, dutifully serving the whims of the elites. Their lives revolved around spreadsheets, profit margins, and quarterly reports, disconnected from the vibrancy of creativity that once defined society. The chasm between these corporate drones and the artists, dreamers, and homesteaders grew wider with each passing day, fueled by a series of insidious laws that threatened to suffocate the very essence of expression. The elites, recognizing the power of art and creativity to inspire change, sought to dismantle the foundations of artistic expression. They employed their corporate minions to draft legislation that would impose heavy taxes on any form of creative endeavor. The rationale was couched in economic terms, framed as a necessary measure to maintain stability in a turbulent world. But beneath this veneer lay a far darker intention: to extinguish the voices that dared to challenge the status quo. As the laws took shape, artists and creators found themselves facing an uphill battle. Galleries that once celebrated innovative works became ghost towns, as exorbitant fees and taxes crushed the spirit of artistic expression. Musicians, writers, and performers struggled to make a living, their talents rendered nearly worthless in a system that no longer valued creativity. The corporate world, in its relentless pursuit of efficiency and profit, had deemed art extraneous, a luxury that could no longer be afforded. In stark contrast, those who conformed to the rigid structure of the corporate machine found themselves rewarded. Tax reliefs were handed out like candy to employees of major corporations, incentivizing blind obedience to the system. The message was clear: fall in line, and you would be rewarded; deviate from the prescribed path, and you would be crushed under the weight of financial burden. This perverse system encouraged complacency, stifling creativity in favor of conformity. Yet, within the halls of Congress, a battle brewed. While the majority of lawmakers caved to the demands of the elite, there emerged a small but determined minority who championed the cause of sovereignty for their constituents. These representatives understood the foundational role of art and creativity in society. They recognized that a culture devoid of expression was a culture on the brink of collapse. They fought valiantly against the tide of legislation designed to silence dissent and extinguish the flame of creativity. In town halls and community meetings, these lawmakers rallied the people, urging them to rise against the encroaching darkness. They spoke passionately about the importance of artistic expression, of the need for a diverse society where all voices could be heard. But the struggle was daunting. The corporate machine had deep roots, and every attempt to challenge the status quo was met with fierce opposition. As the divide deepened, the working class found themselves at a crossroads. Those who had once embraced the idea of homesteading and creating a life rooted in their passions now faced a stark choice: conform to the demands of the corporate world, or risk losing everything they held dear. Many chose the former, abandoning their dreams in search of stability, while others clung to their art, even as the walls closed in around them. The elites watched with a detached satisfaction, knowing that as long as they maintained control over the narrative, the divide would only grow. They reveled in the chaos, convinced that the extinction of creativity would pave the way for their new dystopia, where obedience reigned supreme, and the vibrant tapestry of human expression was reduced to a monochrome existence. In the shadows, however, the embers of resistance flickered. The minority in Congress, fueled by the passion of their constituents, vowed to fight back against the tide of oppression. They understood that the battle for sovereignty was not just a political struggle, it was a fight for the very soul of society, a battle to reclaim creativity, individuality, and the right to dream. As they strategized and rallied support, they knew that the road ahead would be fraught with challenges, but the stakes were too high to abandon hope. The future of art, of expression, and ultimately of humanity hung in the balance. Chapter 3. The Voice of Resistance. Tim Nichols stood at the crossroads of despair and hope, a working-class hero emerging from the shadows of a society that had all but forgotten its roots. With a weathered face and eyes that sparkled with defiance, he had spent years toiling in the factories, witnessing firsthand the slow decay of the life he once knew. But rather than succumbing to the crushing weight of hopelessness, Tim had become a beacon of resistance, channeling the shared struggles of his fellow workers into a powerful voice that resonated throughout the community. It began in the break room of the factory, where Tim gathered with his colleagues during lunch breaks. As they shared their frustrations over the rising costs of living, the oppressive tax laws, and the relentless grind of corporate life, Tim listened intently. He recognized that beneath their exhaustion lay a wellspring of anger and creativity yearning for expression. With every story told and every complaint voiced, he felt the spark of a movement beginning to ignite. Tim's charisma and passion quickly drew people to him. He began organizing informal meetings in local parks, inviting anyone willing to share their experiences and dreams. These gatherings evolved into something more significant: a grassroots effort to unite the working class against the oppressive laws that sought to stifle their very existence. As word spread, more and more people, from artists to farmers, joined the cause, rallying behind Tim's vision of a society where creativity and individuality thrived. As the movement gained momentum, Tim became the face of the resistance. His speeches, filled with raw emotion and authenticity, echoed through the streets, inspiring those who felt silenced. He spoke of the importance of art as a lifeline, a way to express the human experience, and a necessity for a healthy society. He He reminded the people that they were not merely cogs in a corporate machine but vibrant individuals with dreams worth fighting for. However, as his influence grew, so did the ire of the elites. They viewed Tim as a threat to their carefully constructed dystopia, a disruptor who dared to challenge their authority. In response, they unleashed a barrage of propaganda aimed at discrediting him. Media outlets, controlled by the elites, painted Tim as a radical, a danger to society, claiming that his call for creativity and sovereignty would lead to chaos. But these attempts to silence him only fueled his resolve, and he doubled down on his efforts. At a pivotal rally in the heart of the city, Tim stood before a crowd that stretched as far as the eye could see. The air was electric with anticipation, the collective heartbeat of the working class thrumming in unison. He took a deep breath, feeling the weight of their hopes resting on his shoulders. With a steady voice, he addressed the throngs gathered before him. "We are not here to ask for permission to exist. We are here to reclaim our right to create, to dream, and to live without the shackles of oppression. The elites may think they can silence us, but we are the heartbeat of this nation. We are the artists, the farmers, the laborers who build and sustain our communities. Together we will rise." The crowd erupted in applause, their cheers echoing through the streets like a battle cry. In that moment, Tim felt an unbreakable bond with his audience, a shared understanding that they were in this fight together. He knew that their struggle was not just for survival but for the very soul of society. But the path ahead was fraught with danger. As Tim continued to speak out against the injustices wrought by the elite, he received threats and intimidation tactics aimed at silencing his voice. Yet, for every attempt to bring him down, the movement only grew stronger. People began to share their art, their stories, and their dreams, igniting a cultural renaissance among the working class. Tim understood that this was just the beginning of a long and arduous battle. The elites would not relinquish their power easily, and the laws they had passed were designed to entrench their control. But with each passing day, Tim felt the tide shifting. Together with his community, he vowed to dismantle the oppressive structures that sought to extinguish their spirit. As he looked out at the faces of those who had come to support him, Tim realized that their collective strength was greater than any elite could comprehend. They were not merely fighting for survival, they were fighting for a future where creativity could flourish, where the working class could reclaim their dignity and sovereignty. And as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden glow over the city, Tim knew that the struggle ahead would be fierce. But with hope in his heart and the voices of the working class behind him, he was ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The fight for their future had only just begun, and he would not back down. Chapter 4. The Art of Deception. The moon hung high in the night sky, draping the world beneath it in a silver sheen. Tim sat cross-legged by the flickering flames of the barrel fire, his guitar resting against his knee. The soft strumming of his fingers mixed with the crackling of the fire, forming a melody that danced through the crisp air. His crew, a ragtag collection of misfits, gathered around, their faces illuminated by the glow of the fire. They leaned in, captivated by his voice as he sang the wandering hops to sleep, each note carrying the weight of their shared struggles and dreams. Tim had always understood the pulse of the world better than he understood the printed word. Words on paper had never meant much to him, but the stories behind them, the feelings they evoked, that was where his talent lay. With just a third of a deck of cards, he could tell anyone their life story, weaving together the threads of fate and chance with an ease that left his audience spellbound. Each shuffle of the cards was a new adventure, revealing secrets that lay hidden in the hearts of those who dared to listen. As the song faded into the night, Tim glanced around at his crew. They had come together under the banner of rebellion, united by a singular vision, to overthrow the elitist dystopia that had suffocated their lives for far too long. But he knew, deep down, that they lacked something essential. They were brave, resourceful, and fiercely loyal, but they needed someone who could read the fine print of society, the laws, the contracts, the whispers of the powerful. They needed a partner who could navigate the treacherous waters of high society with grace and cunning. "Listen up, everyone," Tim called, his voice breaking the stillness. "We've got a plan, but it's going to take more than just our skills. We need someone who can walk among the elite and come back with their secrets." The fire crackled in agreement, and a few nods of understanding rippled through the group. "What do you have in mind, Tim?" asked Mel, a sharp-witted pickpocket who had joined them after escaping from a life of servitude. Her eyes sparkled with mischief, always ready for the next challenge. Tim leaned forward, the firelight reflecting in his determined gaze. "We're going to infiltrate the next gala at the Grand Hall. It's a gathering of the rich and powerful, and I hear they'll be discussing their plans for the future. If we can get someone in there who can read their body language, their contracts, and maybe even their minds, we could turn the tide in our favor." "Who do you have in mind?" asked Jonah, the muscle of the group. He had a face that could scare off a dozen guards but a heart that beat for the downtrodden. Tim sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. "That's the problem. We don't have anyone. We need someone who can fit in, who knows how to play the game without being noticed. Someone who can read the room as well as they can read a book." As the flames danced higher, shadows flickered across the faces of his crew, each lost in thought. Tim had always relied on his skills to get by, be it storytelling, music, or sleight of hand, but this was different. For the first time, he felt the weight of his limitations pressing down on him. "Maybe there's a way to find someone," Mel suggested, her voice laced with determination. "There must be people out there who want to rebel against the elite just as much as we do. We just need to look in the right places." Tim nodded, a spark of hope igniting within him. "You're right. We can't do this alone. Let's spread the word and see if we can find someone with the skills we need. It's time to expand our crew." As the night wore on, Tim played on, the music a soothing balm for their restless spirits. With each note, he felt the weight of their dreams and aspirations binding them together, a family forged in the fires of rebellion. They would find a partner, someone who could help them write the next chapter of their story, a story that would change everything. As the fire began to die down, Tim made a silent vow. He would do whatever it took to infiltrate the elite's world, even if it meant stepping out of his comfort zone. With sheer skill, and a little bit of luck, he would turn the tides in their favor. And in the end, it wouldn't be his looks, or his ability to read and write that would make the difference. It would be the strength of his spirit and the bonds he forged with those around him. Together they would rise against the elite and reclaim their future. Then Tim heard a strange voice as the face that matched it crept upon the flaming barrel. "I hear you're looking for a script. Someone who can read, write, and maybe even clean up well when needed." Tim found himself looking at the most handsome man he'd ever seen. "With an education to boot?" Tim asked with one raised brow. "Who the hell are you?" The stranger replied with the firmest handshake known to man. "My name is Trey Clark. Pleased to meet you."